Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zone, and welcome to Moral Compass 101. It is my humble prayer that you have had a good week and that you are ready to learn more and to acquire more knowledge. And mine has been a challenging week. It has been extremely difficult because I've had a psychological burden of our sisters in the mother continent. This is due to the explicit video that was trending. Let me call them videos that were trending on different social media platforms. Nonetheless, I've found solace in the Lord through prayers and meditation, and I'm now ready to address this issue. But before then, in the very words of the wisdomist, I have not trusted my eyes, but I've kept my fear of the Lord and turned away from evil. That's according to Proverbs chapter number 3 and verses 7. Having said that, I also want to bring forth an apology and say that I'm deeply sorry that I will not be teaching on our subject of acquiring faith like I promised. However, I'll postpone my promise and keep it next week. This time, I want also to take this chance and invite you to subscribe to Moral Compass 101 so that we can continue acquiring knowledge together. Like and share to spread that knowledge, and please comment so that we can interact collectively. So, just like I said a few minutes ago, I'll address the issue of the Russian male who managed to lure our sisters in their hundreds in a heinous syndicate. Therefore, our topic of the day is titled Caucasian Complex Syndrome. Caucasian Complex Syndrome, or CCS. Caucasian Complex Syndrome is a term I coined to reflect the biased mindset that most people from my mother continent have towards the Caucasian people. This is not a term that exists. I just coined this term for this topic to bring everyone to speed. This is how everything unfolded. Earlier last year, a Russian male content creator traveled to two African nations, namely Ghana and Kenya, not to enjoy the mesmerizing beauty and the alluring African heritage, but with a heinous motive of luring our sisters into his hotel room and secretly recording them with his Meta AI-powered smart glasses. Upon the completion of his abominable expedition, this culprit returns to Russia and posted the secretly recorded explicit videos on social media. This matter did not come to the limelight until a fortnight ago, when the videos started trending online. To your dismay, some of the ladies in these videos are married women and mothers. While hundreds of these ladies ended up in his hotel room, where secretary recorded and some copulated with him, out of the thousands plus ladies that he approached, only two ladies declined his ambivalent offer of going to his hotel room. One Ghanaian and one Kenyan. I liken these incidents with the biblical Sodom and Gomorrah, where only one individual by the name of Lot, who was found to be righteous. So, out of the thousands of our sisters, only two said no to this Russian man. This occurrence is a clear depiction that, despite of the 1995 United Nations Fourth Conference on Women, which among other declarations called for relentless empowerment of a girl child, 30 years in counting, girl child empowerment has only yielded little to no results whatsoever, an occurrence that seems to be a pursuit in futility. It has been 30 years since the famous World Women Conference in Bahrain, in Beijing, China, that talked a lot about girl child empowerment, wrote a report of over 557 pages, but to this day, 30 years later, girl child empowerment is yet to be realized. Having copulated with 400 plus ladies, that was his confession, this Russian male went on social media to brag about how gullible, naive, and cheap-standard our African sisters are. This is so much discouraging. That's the reason to why I had a difficult week trying to comprehend how on earth could such a thing happen in this day and age. While his perception isn't something that we can just sweep under the carpet, it's a mindset that honestly begs one question from our sisters. And what is this question? How low is your moral threshold as an African lady, or do you even have one? How low is your moral threshold as an African lady, as an African queen, or do you even have one? A while back, I wrote a quote that reads, "Any man who cannot meet your moral threshold is not worth taking from the gold mine you have been sitting since birth." Unfortunately, it seems that in this day and age, feminine gold have either lost its precious value or the gold mine have become too shallow for easy extraction by every Tom, Dick, and Harry who crosses your way. It's either or. Either the gold value is no longer precious, or the gold mine has become too shallow for easy extraction by every Tom, Dick, and Harry. While child empowerment in the areas of education, career, and economic liberty seems to be reducing gender aperture globally, it's extremely imperative to know that self-worth is not equal to your income or your net worth, but to your core values, ethical principles, your beliefs, and your moral integrity. I will repeat that statement so that it can sink deep in every person's mind. That it's extremely imperative to know that self-worth is not equal to your income or your net worth, but to your core values, your ethical principles, your beliefs, and your moral integrity. Unfortunately, that's the area that is rarely addressed by different girl-child empowerment movements. Hence, girl-child empowerment on morality is still far-fetched. That as much as we continue to empower our girls economically and academically and also career-wise, the area of morality, empowerment to our girl child is still lagging behind. It's a dream that is still far-fetched. Unlike education, career, and economic freedom, which are areas of empowerment that are academic related, and likewise aspects of intelligence is knowledge, self-worth is an aspect of morality that's incumbent on integrity or wisdom, and godliness as a source of that wisdom. I will repeat that statement. Unlike education, career, and economic freedom, which are areas of empowerment that are academically related, and likewise aspects of intelligence or knowledge, self-worth is an aspect of morality that's incumbent on integrity or wisdom, and the godliness as a source of that wisdom. While the outermost aspect of morality is your faith in God, the inception of that faith is the reverence fear of God that will instigate the wisdom to have faith in Him. That, the outermost or the greatest aspect of morality is your faith in God. And that faith in God comes from the reference fear of God. The only fear that leads to faith is the reference fear of God. In all matters subjugation and inferiority complex, the decades-old words of Eleanor Roosevelt, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent," has hitherto stood the test of time. How? How so? Or what is your consent of being treated inferior? Good, you asked. Your consent is your lack of faith in God. If you do not have faith in God, you cannot be faithful to Him, and subsequently, you cannot have faith in yourself. If you don't have faith in God, you cannot be faithful to Him. You cannot be faithful to someone you don't have faith in. And subsequently, if you are not faithful to God, you cannot be faithful to yourself. While the reason of your self-doubt is your lack of faith, let me repeat that. While the reason of your self-doubt is your lack of self-faith, your lack of self-faith emanates from your lack of faith in God. While the reason of your self-doubt is your lack of self-faith, your lack of self-faith emanates from your lack of faith in God. Your lack of faith in God instigates or contrives the entire metamorphosis of faithlessness and godlessness. Your lack of faith in God instigates the entire metamorphosis of faithlessness and godlessness. Your faith in God is an inner disposition that contrives your outward conducts, which are manifested in visible actions like ethical behavior and moral purity. That faith is not something tangible. That's what we said last time. But it's an inner disposition that's expressed outwardly through your conducts that are manifested visibly through your ethical behavior and moral purity. Unfortunately, it's the faithlessness in God and the subsequent self-faithlessness or passive faith that makes you gullible to the physical, where you, times without number, put your faith in a fellow human being rather than in God. That's why our sisters in their hundreds put their faith in a Russian male under their biased mindset of what I've called Caucasian complex syndrome. This is an aspect of trusting a man or a human being rather than trusting or having faith in God. This aspect triggers both white worship and white savior mentality to an extent of accepting neo-colonialism as a normality. This is to our readers also. The Caucasian complex syndrome also affects our readers, where they have accepted neo-colonialism as a norm. While I'm not ignorant on the notion of white privilege from this Russian culprit, the realization of our sisters' self-worth, their godliness, their moral integrity, and their faith in God would have contrived the audacity to say no to this Russian male, hence a refrain from their consent. I'll repeat that statement. While I'm not ignorant on the notion of white privilege from this Russian culprit, the realization of our sisters' self-worth, their godliness, their moral integrity, and their faith in God would have contrived the audacity to say no to this Russian male, hence a refrain from their consent. And what would MLK, Martin Luther King, say? Don't judge anyone by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. This is now, those days it used to be, on the Africans, but now it's across the board, that you should not judge any human being by the content of the color of their skin, but rather by the content of their character. Because in our case here, this Caucasian male, had pathetic character. And what does the Bible say about allegiance of trust in fellow humans? Cursed are those who put their faith in mankind, who draw strength from mere flesh and turn their hearts from the Lord. That's according to the book of Jeremiah, chapter number 17 and verses 5. That's why after putting their faith in the Russian male in their hundreds, They now have a traumatic psychological burden to carry, having been used and virtually abused by being explicitly posted on social media because they put their faith in a fellow human being, which is contrary to the will of God. In contrast with the present day girl child empowerment, whose objective is primarily on education, career, and economic liberty, that subsequently instigates personal pressure and comfort, the need to morally empower the girl child on matters godliness for the realization of her inherent self-worth, moral integrity, and faith in him is long overdue. That as much as we work to empower our girls economically, career-wise, and in different education sectors, we should not negate the aspect of empowering them morally so that they can find, they can realize their self-worth and their moral integrity. While I'm not against girl child empowerment on the areas of education, career, and economic freedom whatsoever, I'm referencing my claim to the epistle of Apostle Paul to his mentee Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter number 4, verses 8 through 11. And I will read these words. For physical training is of limited value, but godliness has value for all things, since it holds a promise for both present life and the life to come. This is a faithful saying that everyone should accept. This is why we work hard and continue to strive for hope in the living God, who is the Savior of all people. He is the Savior of all people, God, not man, not a Caucasian man, not a black man, not an Asian man. God, a Savior of all people, especially those who believe. 11. Teach these things. This is Paul authorizing Timothy, his mentee, to teach these things and to insist that everyone learns them. Let no one despise your youth. Timothy was a mentee at his young age, and that's why Paul is telling him, let no one despise your youth, but set a good example for believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. 5 things. These African ladies, our sisters, our queens who were ruined by the Russian man, were young, and this Russian man despised their youth. In closing, I kindly implore you to fear God for the sake of wisdom acquisition. That will necessitate you to have faith in Him and subsequently have faith in yourself, that you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Until next time, please stay safe, have faith in God, and you will automatically have faith in yourself. Blessings and shalom.